The small spacecraft moved slowly through the darkness of space. Inside, a man named Taiho held the controls with steady hands. His eyes watched the large purple planet growing bigger in front of them. This was Nethera, the homeworld of the Valorian Empire. He had never been here before, but his wife had told him many stories about it. Beside him sat Aleth, his wife of 7 years. She was not human. Her skin was pale like moonlight, and her eyes were the color of liquid silver. She was beautiful in a way that still made Taiho's heart beat faster, even after all these years. But right now, those silver eyes were filled with fear. "We do not have to do this," Taiho said softly. "We can turn around." "Go back home." Aleth shook her head. "The message came from my grandmother. She is dying. She wants to see her bloodline one last time." She paused and looked down at her hands. "I cannot ignore that, even after everything." 7 years ago, Aleth had been a princess of the Valorian Empire. Her mother, Queen Valara, ruled over hundreds of planets and billions of lives. The Valorians were an ancient species. They lived for thousands of years and believed themselves to be superior to all other beings in the galaxy. Humans were nothing to them. Primitive creatures with short lives and weak bodies. But Aleth had fallen in love with a human. She had met Taiho during peace talks on a space station, far from both their homes. He was a pilot and translator for the Earth's delegation. She was there as part of the Royal Guard. They were not supposed to speak to each other. They were not supposed to look at each other. But they did. Their love had been a crime in the eyes of the Valorian Empire. When Queen Valara discovered it, she gave Aleth a choice: leave the human forever or leave the Empire forever. Aleth chose love. She was banished, stripped of her titles, and told never to return. Now, after 7 long years, they were returning in the back of the spacecraft. A small girl slept under a warm blanket. Her name was Sora, and she was 5 years old. She had her mother's silver eyes and her father's warm smile. Her hair was dark like Taiho's, but it sometimes shimmered with a faint purple light like her mother's people. She was something new. Something that had never existed before. A child of 2 worlds. Taiho looked back at his daughter and felt his chest tighten. He would do anything to protect her. "Anything at all? What do you think your mother will do when she sees us?" he asked. Aleth was quiet for a long moment. "I do not know. She has not forgiven me. I do not think she ever will. But the message came from my grandmother, not her. Grand Matriarch Ilia still has power. My mother cannot refuse her." The spacecraft entered the atmosphere of Nethera. Purple clouds rushed past the windows. Below them a great city appeared. It was made of tall towers that reached up like fingers toward the sky. Everything was white and silver and purple. It was beautiful, but it felt cold. Their ship was directed to land at the outer docking ring, far from the main palace. Taiho understood immediately. This was an insult. Important guests landed at the central platform. They were being treated like beggars. "It has begun," Aleth whispered. The ship landed with a soft sound. Taiho powered down the engines and took a deep breath. He turned to look at his wife. "Together," he said. She nodded. Together, he walked to the back and gently woke Sora. The little girl opened her silver eyes and yawned. "Are we there, Appa?" she asked, using the Korean word for father. "Yes, little star. We are at your mother's home world." Sora looked out the window with wide eyes. "It is so big and so purple." Taiho laughed softly. "Yes, it is. Now hold my hand and stay close to me, okay? No running off." "Okay, Appa." The door of the spacecraft opened and cold air rushed in. Waiting outside were 6 Valorian guards. They were tall and strong, wearing armor that glowed faintly. Their faces showed no emotion. "You will follow us," one of them said. It was not a request. Taiho picked up Sora and held her against his chest. Aleth walked beside him as they followed the guards into the city. People stopped to watch them pass. Taiho heard whispers everywhere. "The tainted princess. Look at the human. So small and weak. Is that their child? What an ugly thing." Taiho's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Aleth walked with her head held high, refusing to show her pain. Sora looked around with innocent curiosity, not understanding the cruel words. They walked through long corridors made of crystal and stone. Every surface was perfect and clean. There were no signs of warmth or comfort anywhere. No pictures of family. No soft chairs. No toys or books. Just cold perfection. Finally, they reached a massive door. It was at least 10 meters tall and covered in ancient symbols. 2 guards pushed it open, and the family stepped inside. The throne room was enormous. Pillars of white stone held up a ceiling so high it was almost invisible. Light came from crystals floating in the air like small suns. At the far end of the room, there were 2 thrones. On the larger throne sat Queen Valara. She looked exactly like Aleth, but older and harder. Her face was like a mask of ice. Her silver eyes held no love, no warmth, no mercy. She wore robes of deep purple and a crown of living crystal that moved and shifted on her head. Beside her, on a smaller throne, sat an ancient Valorian woman. This was Grand Matriarch Ilia. She was Valara's mother and Elith's grandmother. Her skin was thin like paper, and her silver eyes had faded to pale gray. But there was still power in her gaze. Still sharpness in her mind. Aleth stopped walking and bowed her head. Taiho bowed as well, though it was difficult while holding Sora. Mother Aleth said, "Grandmother, we have come as requested." Queen Valara did not speak. She simply stared at them with hatred burning in her eyes. But Grand Matriarch Ilia leaned forward in her throne. Her old eyes moved from Aleth to Taiho to Sora. She studied them carefully. It's like a scientist examining a strange new creature. "So," the old queen said, her voice thin but clear, "this is the human who stole my granddaughter. And this small thing is the child you made together." Taiho felt Sora hide her face against his neck. He held her tighter. "Yes, Grand Matriarch," Aleth said. "This is my husband Taiho, and our daughter Sora." Ilia was silent for a long moment. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then the old queen did something no one expected. She smiled. "Bring them closer," she said. "I wish to see this child. I wish to see what love between 2 worlds has created." Queen Valara's hands gripped her throne so hard the crystal cracked, but she said nothing. She could not refuse her mother. Taiho and Aleth walked forward, carrying little Sora toward an uncertain future. They did not know what would happen next, but they knew they would face it together as a family. Grand Matriarch Ilia stood slowly from her throne. Every guard in the room moved to help her, but she waved them away with a thin hand. She was old beyond imagining, but her pride was still strong. "Leave us," she commanded. Her voice echoed through the massive throne room. Queen Valara's eyes widened. "Mother, you cannot mean to be alone with them. The human could be dangerous." Ilia turned to look at her daughter. There was something cold and sharp in her ancient eyes. "I have ruled this empire for 3,000 years before you were born, Valara. I have killed enemies with my bare hands. I have survived wars that burned entire star systems. Do you truly believe I am afraid of one human man?" Valara's face turned red with shame and anger, but she said nothing. She stood from her throne and walked out of the room. The guards followed her. Soon, the great doors closed with a deep sound, and Taiho found himself alone with his wife, his daughter, and the most powerful woman in the Valorian Empire. Ilia walked toward them slowly. Her robes dragged on the floor behind her like the tail of some ancient beast. She stopped in front of Taiho and looked up at him. Despite her age, her gaze made him feel like a small child. "You are shorter than I expected," she said. Taiho blinked. "I'm sorry to disappoint you, Grand Matriarch." The old queen made a strange sound. It took Taiho a moment to realize she was laughing. "You have courage? That is good. Foolish, perhaps, but good." She turned to Aleth. "Come, child. Bring your family to my private chambers. We have much to discuss, and I grow tired of this cold room." They followed her through a hidden door behind the thrones. The passage led to a smaller room filled with wonders. Star maps floated in the air, showing galaxies Taiho had never seen. Ancient weapons hung on the walls. Books made of strange materials were stacked on shelves that reached the ceiling. In the center of the room was a simple table with comfortable chairs around it. "Sit," Ilya said. "I will have food and drink brought for you. The child must be hungry." Sora had been very quiet since they entered the throne room. But now, in this smaller and warmer space, she began to relax. Taiho set her down on a chair, and she looked around with curious eyes. "Pretty lights," she said, pointing at a glowing star map. Ilya watched the child with interest. "She speaks both languages?" "Yes," Alith answered. "She learned Earth Common and Valorian before she could walk. She also knows some Korean from Taiho's heritage. Impressive." Ilya sat down across from them. A servant appeared silently with food and drinks, then disappeared just as quickly. "Now tell me, human, why did you bond with my granddaughter? Did you not know it would bring her pain? Did you not know she would lose everything?" Taiho felt Alith tense beside him. He reached over and took her hand. "I knew," he said honestly. "We both knew. But love is not something you can control. When I looked at Alith, I saw the other half of my soul. I saw my future. I saw home." He paused. "I did not steal her from you. She chose to come with me, and I will spend every day of my short human life trying to be worthy of that choice." Ilya was silent. Her ancient eyes studied him like she was reading words written on his soul. "Humans live barely 100 years, she said. Alith will live for thousands. You will grow old and die while she remains young. Your daughter will watch you fade away. Have you thought about this?" The question was cruel, but Taiho did not look away. "Yes, I think about it every day. But I believe that 100 years of true love is worth more than 10,000 years of cold loneliness." Alith was not happy here. She was a prisoner in a golden cage. "With me, she is free. With me, she laughs and cries and lives." He squeezed his wife's hand. "I cannot give her forever, but I can give her everything I have." Something changed in Ilya's face. The hardness softened, just a little. "You speak well for a primitive creature," she said, but there was no insult in her voice now. It almost sounded like respect. While the adults were talking, Sora had climbed down from her chair. She wandered around the room, looking at all the strange and wonderful things. On a small table near the wall, she found a cube made of crystal. It had lights inside it that moved and changed color. Symbols appeared and disappeared on its surface. The little girl picked it up and began to play with it. Her small fingers pressed the symbols, turned the sides, and made the lights dance. Ilya noticed what the child was doing, and her eyes went wide. "Put that down," she said sharply. Taiho jumped up, ready to grab Sora, but it was too late. The cube made a soft, chiming sound, and all its lights turned gold. The room became very quiet. "What is that thing?" Taiho asked. Ilya did not answer. She was staring at Sora with an expression Taiho could not read. The old queen slowly stood and walked toward the child. "That is the puzzle of ancients," she finally said. "It is a test of intelligence we give to our greatest scholars. Most take hours to solve it. Some take days. Many never solve it at all." She knelt down to look at Sora. "You solved it in minutes." Sora held out the glowing cube to the old queen. "I made it pretty," she said proudly. Ilya took the cube with trembling hands. She looked at Alith, then at Taiho, then back at Sora. "I must run tests," she said. "Genetic analysis. Cognitive mapping. I must understand what this child is." Alith stepped forward, her maternal instincts suddenly alert. "She is not a subject for experiments, grandmother. She is my daughter." "I am not going to hurt her," Ilya said. Her voice was different now. There was excitement in it. Wonder. Just need to see. I need to understand. Taiho looked at his wife. She looked back at him. A silent conversation passed between them. Finally, Alith nodded. "Very well, but we stay with her the entire time." The tests took several hours. Machines scanned Sora's body. Lights mapped her brain. Computers analyzed her blood and cells and genetic code. Through it all, Sora was brave. She held her father's hand and only cried once. When a machine made a scary noise, when it was over, Ilya sat in her chair and stared at the results on a floating screen. She did not move for a long time. "This is impossible," she finally whispered. "What is?" Aleth asked. "What do the tests show?" Ilya turned to face them. Her ancient face was pale with shock, but her eyes were burning with something new, something that looked almost like hope. The hybrid DNA was supposed to be weak. That is what our scientists always said. Mixing Valorian blood with lesser species would create flawed creatures. Sick, stupid, short-lived. She pointed at Sora, who was now sleeping in her father's arms. "That child is none of those things. Her neural pathways are developing faster than any Valorian I have ever seen. Her immune system is stronger than both human and Valorian. She does not have our weaknesses or yours. She has only strengths." Taiho held his daughter tighter. He did not know whether to feel proud or afraid. Ilya stood and walked toward them. She reached out and gently touched Sora's sleeping face. "This child may be the future we did not know we needed," she said softly. "She may be the greatest hope of the Valorian Empire, or its greatest threat." She looked at Taiho with new eyes. "You have created something extraordinary, human. You and my granddaughter together. I do not yet know what it means, but I know that everything has changed." Outside the room, somewhere in the palace, Queen Valara waited for news. She did not know yet what the tests had revealed. She did not know that her mother's heart was beginning to open. She did not know that her power was about to be challenged in ways she never imagined, but she would find out soon. And when she did, there would be blood. Queen Valara stood by the tall window of her private chambers, watching the twin moons rise over the city. Her hands were clasped behind her back so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Her beautiful face was twisted with anger. The news had reached her. Her mother, Grand Matriarch Ilya, had spent hours with the hybrid child. She had run tests. She had smiled. She had called the little creature extraordinary. The word burned in Valara's mind like poison. Her daughter Aleth had betrayed the Empire. She had polluted the royal bloodline with human genes. She had created an abomination. And now, instead of punishing this crime, Valara's own mother was treating it like a miracle. A servant approached carefully. "Your Majesty, the Princess Aleth requests an audience with you." Princess Valara said the word with hatred. She lost that title 7 years ago. But fine, let her come. I have words for her. Aleth entered the chamber alone. She had left Taiho and Sora with her grandmother, knowing this conversation needed to happen privately. She walked toward her mother and stopped at a respectful distance. "Mother," she said softly. Valara did not turn around. "You should not have come back. Grandmother summoned me. I had no choice. There is always a choice." Finally, Valara turned to face her daughter. Her silver eyes were cold as winter stars. "You made your choice 7 years ago, when you spread your legs for that human animal?" Aleth felt the words like a slap, but she did not react. She had expected cruelty. "Taiho is not an animal. He is my husband. He is the father of my child. He is kind and brave and good. He is nothing," Valara spat. "He is a creature of dirt and blood who will be dead before a single century passes. And you threw away your birthright for him. You threw away everything." "I threw away a cage," Aleth said quietly. "I threw away a life of cold duty and empty ceremonies. I found love, Mother. Real love. The kind you have never known and never will." Valara's hand moved so fast it was almost invisible. The slap knocked Aleth backward, and she fell to the floor. Her cheek burned with pain. "You dare speak to me of love?" Valara's voice was a hiss. "I loved you. I gave you everything. Tutors, trainers, the finest education in the galaxy. I prepared you to rule an empire. And you betrayed me for a human." Leth slowly stood up. She tasted blood in her mouth, but she did not touch her wounded face. "You never loved me, Mother. You loved what I could become. A tool, a weapon, an extension of your power. You never saw me as a person." "Get out," Valara said. "Get out of my chambers before I do something I will not regret." Leth turned and walked toward the door. But before she left, she stopped and looked back. I came here because grandmother is dying. I came to say goodbye to the only person in this palace who ever showed me kindness. When she is gone, I will leave and never return. You will never see me or my family again." She paused. "I hope that makes you happy, Mother. I hope your pride keeps you warm in your empty throne room." She left the chamber without waiting for a response. Valara stood alone in the darkness for a long time. Then she called for her most trusted guard. "Find Lord Kethos," she commanded. "Tell him I have a task for him. A quiet task. The kind that must not be traced back to the crown." The guard bowed and disappeared. That night, Taiho could not sleep. He sat by the window of the guest quarters they had been given, looking out at the alien sky. 2 moons hung in the darkness, one purple and one silver. Strange birds flew past, their wings making no sound. A soft knock came at the door. Taiho stood and moved carefully. He had not survived years of space travel without learning to be cautious. He picked up a small knife from the table and approached the door. "Who was there?" he called. "A friend," a voice answered. "Or at least not an enemy." "My name is Lord Kethos. I have information you need." Taiho opened the door slowly. Outside stood a tall Valorian man with sharp features and clever eyes. He wore the robes of a noble, but there was something different about him. Something almost playful. "May I come in?" Kethos asked. "What I have to say should not be heard in hallways." Taiho stepped aside and let the man enter. He kept his knife ready. Kethos looked around the room and smiled when he saw the blade. "Smart, I like that." Turned to face Taiho directly. "I will not waste time with pretty words. Queen Valara has ordered your death. Assassins will come for you tonight. Probably within the hour." Taiho's blood went cold, but his face remained calm. "Why are you telling me this? Are you not loyal to the Queen?" "I am loyal to the Empire," Kethos said. "And I believe the Empire needs change. Valara is strong, but she is also blind. She cannot see past her own pride." He looked at Taiho with genuine curiosity. "You walked into a place that hates you. You knew you might die here, yet you came anyway, for love. I find that admirable. So you are helping me because you respect me?" Kethos laughed. "I am helping you because I want to see what happens next. The Grand Matriarch believes your daughter is special. If that is true, the Empire will be transformed. If it is false, well, at least I will have had some entertainment." He moved toward the door. "The assassins will come through the window. There will be 4 of them. They are trained to kill Valorians, not humans. Use that to your advantage." Before Taiho could ask more questions, Kethos was gone. Taiho stood in the darkness and thought, "For assassins, 1 hour." He looked at the small knife in his hand. It would not be enough. He moved quickly. He pushed furniture near the window to create obstacles. He found a heavy lamp that could be used as a weapon. He took the sheets from the bed and tore them into strips. Then he waited. The assassins came exactly as Kethos had predicted. 4 shadows slipped through the window like ghosts. They moved with perfect grace, their feet making no sound. They carried blades that glowed faintly with poison. They expected to find a sleeping human. An easy kill. Instead, they found chaos. Taiho threw the lamp at the first assassin's head. While that one stumbled, he grabbed the second and pulled him into the path of the third. The torn sheets tangled their feet. They were trained for elegant combat against predictable enemies. Taiho was not elegant. He was not predictable. He was a survivor. He fought dirty. He bit. He scratched. He threw sand in their eyes. He used their own weapons against them. He screamed and raged and refused to die. When it was over, Taiho stood in the middle of the room, breathing hard. His body was covered in cuts and bruises. Blood dripped from a wound on his forehead. But he was alive. The 4 assassins were on the floor, conscious and tied with bedsheets. Alith burst into the room, woken by the noise. She saw the scene and her face went white. "Taiho, are you hurt? What happened?" "Your mother sends her love," Taiho said with a grim smile. Then his legs gave out, and he fell into his wife's arms. In the morning, Grand Matriarch Ilya received an unusual report. 4 of the Queen's secret assassins had been found bound and gagged outside the royal throne room. A message was written on the floor beside them in their own blood. Try again. When Ilya heard this, she laughed for the first time in 50 years. Bring me the human, she commanded. I believe we need to have another conversation. The Great Hall of Council was the largest room Taiho had ever seen. It was built to make anyone who entered feel small and insignificant. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadow. The walls were covered with images of conquered planets and defeated enemies. Thousands of seats rose up on all sides like a giant bowl, each one filled with a Valorian noble, military commander, or planetary governor. They had all come to see the humans speak. Taiho stood at the center of the hall on a raised platform. His wounds from the night before had been treated by Valorian healers, but he still looked battered. His face was bruised. His movements were stiff, but his eyes were clear and unafraid. Beside him, in a special seat of honor, sat Grand Matriarch Ilya. She had called this meeting herself, using powers that not even Queen Valara could challenge. In the front row of seats, Valara sat with barely controlled rage on her face. She had been forced to watch as her mother elevated a human to the position of speaker before the highest council in the Empire. On Ilya's other side sat Alith, holding little Sora on her lap. The child looked around at the thousands of alien faces with wonder rather than fear. She did not understand that many of those faces held hatred for her. To her, this was simply a very big room with very many people. Ilya raised her thin hand, and the hall fell silent. Lords and ladies of the Valorian Empire, she said, her voice somehow filling the enormous space. I have called you here to witness something unprecedented. For 10,000 years, our species has ruled this region of the galaxy. We have conquered. We have dominated. We have believed ourselves to be the highest form of life in existence. She paused and looked at Taiho. Today you will hear from a human, a member of a species we have always dismissed as primitive and worthless. He will speak and you will listen. This is my command. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some were angry. Some were confused. Some were curious. Valara's hands gripped the arms of her chair so tightly the wood creaked. Taiho stepped forward. His heart was pounding, but he kept his face calm. He looked out at the sea of silver eyes and pale faces. These beings had lived for thousands of years. They had seen the birth and death of stars. They commanded fleets that could destroy planets. And he was just one human man, but he thought of Alith. He thought of Sora. He thought of everything he was fighting for. And he began to speak. I know what you think of me, he said. His voice was steady and clear. You think I am a primitive creature? A bug. A thing that lives for a moment and then dies and is forgotten. You think I tricked your princess, seduced her, stole her from her proper place? You think I am worthless? He paused and let his words settle over the crowd. You are wrong. Some of the nobles laughed. Others made sounds of anger. But Ilya raised her hand again, and they fell silent. Let me tell you about my species, Taiho continued. We have not lived for thousands of years like you. Our recorded history is only a few thousand years old. But in that short time, we have done things that should be impossible. He began to walk slowly around the platform, looking at different sections of the crowd. We have nearly destroyed ourselves many times. We have fought terrible wars against each other. We have polluted our own planet. We have created weapons that could end all life on our world. By your standards, we should have died out long ago. He stopped and smiled. We did not die. Every time we fell, we got back up. Every time we burned our world, we rebuilt it. Every time we faced extinction, we survived. Not because we are strong like you. Not because we are long-lived like you. But because we refused to give up. The hall was completely silent now. Even Valara was listening. You measure worth in centuries, Taiho said. You think a life that lasts only decades is meaningless. But I say you are wrong. We do not have time to waste. Every moment is precious to us. So we fill our short lives with more love, more passion, more creativity than you can imagine. He turned and pointed toward Alith and Sora. I married your princess, not because I wanted power or wealth. I married her because she is my home. When I am with her, I am complete. And together, we created that child. His voice softened. Sora is 5 years old. She has already solved puzzles that your greatest scholars cannot solve. She speaks 3 languages. She looks at the universe with wonder and joy. She is proof that connection is more powerful than purity. He walked to the edge of the platform, as close to the crowd as he could get. My grandmother was a woman named Yunji. She lived through a great war on Earth. She lost her husband, her brothers, her home. She had nothing left except her children. But she survived. She raised 7 children by herself. She taught them to be kind, to be strong, to never give up hope. Taiho's eyes grew wet, but he did not look away from the crowd. She lived only 73 years. By your standards, she was barely a child when she died. But she touched more lives, created more love, built more legacy in those 73 years than most beings do in 10,000. He took a deep breath. It is what humans are. We are not weak. We are not primitive. We are fire. We burn bright and fast, and we leave the universe warmer than we found it. You can look down on us if you want. You can call us bugs and animals and primitives, but we will keep coming. We will keep loving. We will keep surviving, because that is what we do. He turned and looked directly at Queen Valara. You tried to have me killed last night. You sent for assassins to murder me in my sleep. But I am still here. I am still standing. And I will keep standing every single day for as long as I live. For my wife. For my daughter. For love. The silence in the hall was complete. No one moved. No one spoke. Then, slowly, Grand Matriarch Ilya began to clap. One by one, others joined her. Not everyone. Perhaps not even most. But enough. The sound of applause filled the great hall like thunder. Ilya stood from her seat. Her ancient voice rang out over the crowd. I have heard enough. By my authority as Grand Matriarch, I declare that the child Sora is a legitimate member of the royal bloodline. She shall not rule. She shall not inherit the throne. But she shall be protected by imperial law. Any harm done to her will be considered an attack on the empire itself. Valara shot to her feet. Mother, you cannot do this. The council has not voted. Ilya turned to face her daughter. There was no anger in her eyes, only sadness. I do not need the council's vote. The matriarch's bloodline judgment is final. This is the law you swore to uphold when you took the crown. She looked at Valara with something almost like pity. You have forgotten what truly makes us strong, my daughter. It is not purity. It is not pride. It is the ability to change, to grow. To love. Valara stood frozen for a moment. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out of the great hall. The crowd parted to let her pass. As she left, Taiho watched her go. He felt no victory, no satisfaction. Only a deep tiredness and a small, quiet hope. Aleph came to stand beside him, holding Sora in her arms. The little girl reached out for her father, and he took her gently. You are amazing, Aleph whispered. Taiho shook his head. I just told the truth. That is all I have ever had. From her throne, Ilya watched the small family embrace, and for the first time in many centuries, she allowed herself to believe that the future might hold something better than the past. The weeks that followed were strange and wonderful. Taiho, Aleph, and Sora were moved from the cold guest quarters to a warm suite inside the palace itself. They had their own garden with purple flowers and silver trees. They had servants who brought them food and clothes. They had guards who protected them, not imprisoned them. It was not perfect. Many Valorians still hated them. They received cold stares and whispered insults wherever they went. Some nobles refused to be in the same room as the human and his mongrel child. Queen Valara had not been seen since the council meeting. She stayed in her private chambers, speaking to no one except her most trusted advisors. But Grand Matriarch Ilya made sure the family was safe. And slowly, things began to change. Sora became something of a celebrity among the younger Valorians. They had never seen anything like her before. She looked different from them, with her human father's dark hair and warm skin. But she could think like them, learn like them, sometimes even faster. She played their games and invented new rules that made the games more fun. She asked questions that made adult scholars stop and think. One day, Tiho found his daughter sitting in the garden with a group of Valorian children. They were all playing together, laughing and chasing each other through the silver trees. It was the most beautiful sight he had ever seen. She is changing them, Alith said softly, appearing beside him. She is showing them that different does not mean dangerous. Children are like that, Tiho said. They do not hate until someone teaches them to hate. Aleth took his hand. Perhaps we can unteach them. As the days passed, Ilia grew weaker. Her ancient body was finally failing after thousands of years of life. She spent most of her time in her private chambers now, resting on a bed covered with soft blankets. But she always had energy for so. The little girl would visit her great-grandmother every day. She would climb onto the bed and tell stories about her adventures in the garden. She would show Ilia drawings she had made. She would ask endless questions about the history of the Empire. The stars, the universe. Ilia loved every moment of it. One evening, she called Tiho to her chambers alone. When he arrived, he found the old queen looking even smaller than before. Her skin was almost transparent and her breathing was slow. "Sit," she said, pointing to a chair beside her bed. Tiho sat. He had grown to respect this ancient woman more than almost anyone he had ever known. She was hard and cold in many ways, but she was also wise and fair. "I do not have much time left," Ilia said simply. "A few days, perhaps? Perhaps only hours. The healers cannot say for certain." "I am sorry," Tiho said. And he meant it. Ilia made a weak sound that might have been a laugh. "Do not be sorry. I have lived for more than 4,000 years. That is long enough. Too long, perhaps." She turned her ancient eyes toward him. "But before I go, I wanted to speak with you one last time." "I am listening." "When you first came here, I thought you were a fool. A brave fool, perhaps, but still a fool. What kind of creature walks into an empire that wants him dead, just for love?" She paused. "But I have watched you these past weeks. I have seen how you treat my granddaughter, how you care for your child, how you face hatred with patience instead of anger." She reached out and took his hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "I was wrong about humans," she said. "I have been wrong for thousands of years. Your species is not primitive. You are simply different. You burn bright and fast, like stars that explode instead of fading. And that brightness, that fire, is exactly what this empire needs." Tiho felt tears forming in his eyes, but he did not look away. "My daughter Valara is afraid of you," Ilia continued. "She is afraid of what you represent. Change, growth, the end of the old ways. But change is coming whether she accepts it or not. Sora will grow up. She will become something the galaxy has never seen before. And she will carry both your fire and our patience inside her." The old queen released his hand and reached under her pillow. She pulled out a small pendant on a silver chain. It was made of crystal that seemed to contain a living flame. "This is the blessing of the Grand Matriarch," she said. "I have worn it for 4,000 years. It was given to me by my mother, and to her by her mother, and so on back to the first queens of our people." She placed it in Tiho's hand. "I give it to you now." Tiho's eyes widened. "I cannot accept this. I am not Valorian. I am not royalty. This belongs to your family." "You are my family," Ilia said firmly. "You married my granddaughter. You fathered my great-grandchild. You stood before the entire empire and spoke truths that we needed to hear." She smiled, and for a moment she looked almost young again. "Take it. Give it to Sora when she is old enough. Let it remind her that strength without love is just tyranny." Tiho held the pendant carefully, feeling its warmth against his palm. "I will protect them," he said. "Alith and Sora, I will protect them with everything I have. I know you will." Ilia closed her eyes. "Now bring them to me. I would like to see my family one last time." Tiho brought Alith and Sora to the chamber. They sat together around the old queen's bed as the night grew dark outside. Ilya told stories of the ancient times, of wars and peace, of love and loss. Sora fell asleep with her head on her great-grandmother's shoulder, just before dawn. Grand Matriarch Ilya took her last breath. She died peacefully, surrounded by the family she had almost never known. The family that had taught her, in her final weeks of life, that there was still beauty and wonder in the universe. The funeral was the largest in Valorian history. Every noble, every commander, every governor came to pay respects. Taiho stood with Aleth and Sora as Ilya's body was carried to the ancient temple. He wore the pendant hidden under his clothes, close to his heart. After the ceremony, as the crowd began to leave, a shadow fell over them. Taiho looked up and found himself face to face with Queen Valara. She looked older than before, tired, sad. The rage that had burned in her eyes was gone, replaced by something more complicated. For a long moment she simply stared at him. Taiho prepared himself for another attack, another insult, another threat, but none came, instead. Valara gave him a single slow nod. In Valorian culture, it was a gesture of respect. It meant worthy adversary. It meant I acknowledge you. It was not forgiveness. It was not love. But it was something. Then the queen turned and walked away without a word. 3 days later, Taiho guided their spacecraft away from Nethera. The purple planet grew smaller behind them until it was just another point of light among the stars. Aleth sat beside him, her silver eyes wet with tears. She was saying goodbye to her home world for what might be the last time, but she was also going home, her real home. The home she had built with her husband and daughter sat in the back, drawing pictures on a data pad. She looked up as the stars began to blur into the strange patterns of hyperspace. "Appa," she said, "will we ever come back?" Taiho thought about the question. He thought about Ilya and her final gift. He thought about Valara and her silent nod. He thought about all the young Valorians who had played with his daughter in the garden. "Yes," he finally said. "Whenever family calls, we answer." The ship jumped into hyperspace, carrying them toward the future. Behind them, the Valorian Empire continued to turn, changed forever by one human's courage and one child's laughter. Ahead of them lay Earth and home and all the adventures still to come. Aleth reached over and took Taiho's hand. He looked at her, at the love of his life, at the woman who had given up everything for him. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For being brave enough to love me. For being stubborn enough to survive. For being human." Taiyu smiled and squeezed her hand. "I would do it all again," he said. "Every moment. Every danger. Every fight. For you, for Sora, for us." Outside the window, the stars stretched into infinity. Somewhere out there, a little girl who was both human and Valorian was dreaming of all the worlds she would one day explore. She did not know yet that she was special. She did not know that she would change the galaxy. She only knew that she was loved, and that, in the end, was all that mattered.